Hi there to everyone in the Property Wealth System community group. Tonight I'm going to be sharing with you a Q&A session. I've had a ton of questions come through to my inbox, so I will be working my way through them tonight. We'll also put this on as a Brucey bonus on this Property Life podcast, brought to you by Property Wealth System. So you can listen to the content again on that podcast. So check it out there. This will still be available on the community for around a month as well. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Caroline Claydon. I've been a property investor for over 25 years, which is why I need so much makeup on a Sunday night. 10 years of that, I did it completely wrong. And then I got myself educated and trained and mentored and coached, and everything completely changed for me at that point. So we want to bring as much content and value to our community as possible. I do this in my spare time. My main business is, of course, property, but I've been training and educating and coaching and mentoring people for close on 14 years now, and I genuinely love the people that I meet, and of course a large number of those people that I've trained over the years are now one of Property Wealth System's mentors and coaches and trainers themselves. So Property Wealth System is a collective of professional investors who are dead ordinary people but are doing extraordinary things within the property world. So I'm going to go to my list of questions now. I will share the name of the person who's asked the question, and then I will go through the questions one at a time. But of course, if you have any questions that pop into your mind at all this evening while you're watching me, of course you can pop that below and I'll hopefully catch it. Honestly, I do need glasses to read these questions, but I'm just too vain to wear them live. So here we go. The very first question from Louise is about how you realize the end value of an apart hotel or smart hotel. This is actually a pretty complex answer. So I'm going to just dive into it straight away. So first of all, it depends on, number one, the location. And you really, Louise, need to be speaking to your commercial agents in the area that you're going to do your hotel. They will look at the building in terms of its size, but they will also look at the number of bedrooms, so what they call the number of keys. And they will have a rough idea of a price per key that someone would be willing to pay if they were going to buy your hotel. So there's that, but there's also the EBITDA that we have to take into consideration, and there will be a multiplier of your EBITDA that they will use to value. Now, all of this you need to establish with your commercial agents before you go into your deal. And of course, it can change over time. The challenge you have when you're valuing a hotel is it obviously is at its absolute peak value once you have a good track record of revenue that's been generated from it. So for example, you can have the building valued on a bricks and mortar valuation. As a building, what would it be valued at? And then after 12 to 24 months of trading, they'll look at your profit levels within that 12 to 24 month period, and they'll establish an EBITDA number and then have a multiplier for that location. So for example, here in Edinburgh, you're looking at a 12, 13 times multiplier on the EBITDA. But when they do that multiplier, they then look at the number that it brings and they go, how much is that per key? Is that in line with what someone would pay? And they maybe will just adjust it as they go. So it is not a straightforward valuation formula based on GDV or yield or anything like that. It is quite a complicated process. It's one that I love picking apart and challenging the agents on. In fact, tomorrow we are having one of our units valued based on its EBITDA, and I have stated my case for what I believe it should be worth, with all the research of the number of agents I've been speaking to, and we'll see what number they come back with. So Louise, I hope that has helped you establish how you can realize the end value of a hotel. It's not straightforward, it's not easy, but lots of digging in the market. You have to know that local market inside out and get the agents to give you as much information as possible. Right, next question, Mr. Olasumna. Which is better, buy-to-let, HMO, or serviced accommodation? Okay, my answer to that is going to be, it depends. What are you trying to achieve? Those three are very, very different business models. I do all three, and I would never say that one is better than the other. To quantify that, I'd say, well, buy-to-let is generally your steady Eddie. Everyone needs somewhere to live, and so having a single unit with a single tenant is absolute bread and butter to your property business. Steady Eddie. Then you've got your HMO, which is like a supercharged buy-to-let. And you'll find that if you do one HMO, that's equivalent of doing, say, 4 or 5 buy-to-lets, depending on the area, of course. And again, that is really determined by demand. Buy-to-let, there's demand all over the place, apart from really rural areas. But on HMO, you're far more dictated by the demand in a particular area. So if you're starting with a strategy of HMOs, you would need to choose your location based on where HMOs are in high demand. But they are a bit supercharged. The downsides is, of course, the legislations, the regulations. It's not that straightforward. And as a starter, getting the lending on HMO can be more challenging than getting your buy-to-lets. And then if we go into serviced accommodation, because you've asked for all three, well, that is another step. Again, I'm not going to say above HMOs, because actually regulatorily, it's on a par, if you like, with buy-to-let. If you've got, like, say, a 2-bed unit or a 3-bed unit, and you want to turn that into an Airbnb, then you are literally just moving into more the hospitality industry as opposed to the property industry. So it's really, really difficult for me to say which one is better out of all of those three, because all three of them do very, very different things. Your end user is very different, and your financial results will be massively dependent on the location that you're doing it in, what kind of numbers you're using, and ultimately what you're trying to achieve. So I know that's a pretty roundabout way of saying it depends on what you want, but I guess you sound as if you're at the very beginning and you're trying to work out which avenue to go down. Bring it back always to what are you trying to achieve? What financial security number are you trying to obtain? And how many units is it going to take you to get there if you do buy-to-lets? How many units is it going to take you if you do, say, 5 to 10 buy-to-lets and then move to HMOs? Because that's the more sensible route, generally speaking. Or if you just do serviced accommodation, that would make me nervous, because you could be open to market conditions moving against you, and then you've no solid foundation. So just think very, very carefully and come right back to what are you trying to achieve? How much money are you trying to make on a monthly basis? And then fit your strategy around that. But trying to do all three at once is not going to work. I'll tell you that right now. Stick with one, focus on one, master that before you move on to the next. Hope that's helped you. Let's see. Oh, Michael sent in what I would say is not actually a question, but more of a statement. And Michael, I really want to reach out to you, because you said here, I don't believe I can make it in property. And I just want to pause for a second and say, if you believe that, Michael, guess what? You're absolutely right. Because what you believe becomes your reality. And I don't want to get woo-woo on you at all. But if you are struggling and you feel really challenged at getting property to work for you, don't be afraid to ask for help. What is it that is the biggest stumbling block? How long have you actually been trying to get into property? And if I'm going to be really brutal with you, what actions have you taken in the last 2 weeks to help you get into property and achieve what it is that you're looking to achieve? Whenever I have had someone reach out to me on social media or on my messages or WhatsApps me or whatever, and they say, this is not working for me, I say to them, how many properties have you viewed in the last 2 weeks? And I guarantee the answer is always none. And property is not going to work for you if you're not viewing properties, right? So Michael, I want you to reach out to me, DM me on Instagram, please, and tell me what it is that you're actually struggling with, and I'll point you in the right direction. But you're on my radar now. And if you are struggling, which it sounds like you are, then you need a bit more help. And I'm going to cuddle you or kick you. Either way, it's going to help you, right? So Michael, big shout out to you. Some love on a Sunday night. You can do it. You just got to start believing you can do it, because I'm not being funny. This is not about intellect, it's not about finance, it's not about being in the right place at the right time, this is not about luck, this is about you making it happen. And that's coming from a middle-class woman of a certain age. So we all know what those women are like out there at the moment. Greg Wallace, hashtag. So there we go. The next question is from Azim. Azim, you're saying in service accommodation, you're allowed 90 days for short stays, tourist accommodation. Who would one advertise to make the business viable? All right. So the 90-day restriction exists in London. So Azim, I'm assuming you're in the London area. So my first response is just don't do serviced accommodation in London. There's your easy option. Or alternatively, get the correct permissions so that you can go beyond the 90 days. So remember, those restrictions are just for residential property. If you have a bigger unit that you can get a change of use class on, then the 90-day restriction doesn't count, right? So as in, if you're thinking about service accommodation as your strategy, think outside of London so that you don't have that 90-day restriction. Or if you want to do it in London because you live there and for other reasons you think that that's where you should do it best, then go bigger and go down the commercial route. And then that takes away all those restrictions that you've just mentioned there. But ultimately the platforms are well aware of these restrictions that are in place, and so they will restrict you advertising your property if it's residential. So I've given you a couple of solutions there. Again, reach out if you have any other questions on that. Okay, next. Shad has a number of questions that they've sent through to me. So could you please cover my questions about the property I have and may wish to convert to HMO or service accommodation? Okay, so Shad, first of all, again, if you're converting it to HMO, that's one route. Converting it to service accommodation, that's very much a different route. So you need to be clear on which one are you choosing. After conversion, is it best to leave in my personal name or incorporate into a property limited company? What are the risks? And then he follows up and says, how do I get the money out of the house, or should I not, as that is a safe bank if needed? Okay, there's a lot to unpick there. Okay, so your question really is about, should the property stay in your personal name or go into a limited company? The bottom line is, it's already in your personal name, right? It's already been done. The fact that you're converting it is neither here nor there, and which option you choose, HMO or service accommodation, is irrelevant. If you decide to move it into a property limited company, you will have to pay stamp duty and capital gains tax. So whatever value you add to that property to convert it, and bear in mind you will be adding value to it, you'll pay capital gains tax on that, and you'll also pay stamp duty because you, as a person, Shad, are selling it to the limited company that you may be a sole director of, right? So that is the downside of moving the property. The downside of keeping it in your personal name is, of course, clause 24, the tax legislation that came in where you are paying tax on the mortgage payments, okay? Now, I don't know the value of this property and what the tax implications are behind this, but if this is your one and only property that you're considering converting, I would leave as is, but it does depend on which tax bracket you're currently in if you're working in a job right now. So I can't give you the definitive what you should do without knowing more about you, Shad, but you are saying what are the risks? Well, the risks is all about tax. Clause 24, if it's in your personal name, and if it's in a limited company, you get lots and lots of fantastic tax benefits. Well, I say fantastic tax benefits. Keir Starmer's putting an end to that. But you get better tax efficiency in a limited company. However, you're going to have to pay stamp and capital gains to get there. All right. All right. So next. He says, how do I get my money out? Oh, yes. So how do I get my money out? So you get your money out through the refinance, okay, the refinance, or from the sale, okay. Now, I teach everyone to get their money out of the deals by refinancing, if they're keeping it, to rent it out for cash flow, or to flip it on and get their money back that way. There's no benefit for you to not do that, because the whole model that we teach is you put your money in, you get your money out, you get the asset for free, you get the income for life. Yep. So pulling that money out means that you can then go back into another deal and recycle the cash. I hope that's helped. Azim's just said, that's now a country rule, the 90 days thing. No, okay. Let's be clear on this. You need planning to get the correct, to get the permissions to rent your properties out, right? Scotland's completely different laws on this than it is in London and England, all right? So it is not countrywide, Azim, but you do need to get planning, licensing in order to rent your properties out. Now, it is a pain in the hip, and it depends on the size of your unit, and you need to be really, really careful about what route you're going to go down with that. So just be very, very clear, where are you looking to do it, Azim? What size of unit are you going for? And the planning, particularly in Scotland for the licensing, is incredibly challenging. Now, one of our mentors, Ryan, he does service accommodation throughout Scotland, and he jumps through all these hoops. He knows the particular areas that and understands the processes that he goes through. So it can be done. It just depends on your gameplay on it. So Azim, I hope that's helped you. Right, back to Shad. So getting the money out, you do through a refinance. You've added value to the property through converting it. You get that new valuation. You then refinance the property at 75% loan to value, and you get the money that you spent on converting back out. But Shad, I'm going to say, I am reading between the lines here that I believe it sounds like you are looking to convert a property that you're actually living in at the moment, because your follow-up question is, if you wish to get into property investing, should one get rent or buy a house whilst doing so with a family? Could you please go into some depth about this and pros and cons of this? I have some equity. I'm wondering to rent instead of convert my house into an HMO or SOA. So your whole question about SA or HMO is about converting the house you actually live in right now. So this is a bit of a different beast. You haven't bought that property to convert, and so you haven't done all the numbers based on that being a commercially viable business. It's your home that you're living in, yes? So this is different. Now, in the Robert Kiyosaki methodology behind investing, little plug there for good old Rich Dad, Poor Dad, he talks about building your assets first before you buy your doodads. Well, your liabilities, okay? So your house that you're living in fact, anywhere that you live, rented or purchased and owned, is a liability, okay? You might think that your house is an asset because it's your castle and it's going up in value, and people have argued till they're blue in the face with me on this one. But if it takes money from your pocket, it is a liability. So fundamentally, wherever you live, even if it's completely paid off and you're mortgage free, you still have to pay council tax and utilities and all that. So it takes money from your pocket. Where you live is a liability. And Robert Kiyosaki and I believe that you should, if you're starting from scratch, rent property, rent a home, and then buy your dream house later on. But Shad, you're in a different situation. You're already in your house. You already own it. Why try and mess with that? Right? I know that you've got equity in it and you're thinking, I need that equity to get started, or I want that equity to get started. Forget that. Do not touch the equity in your house, right? Just leave that well alone, because frankly, you don't know what you're doing right now. So why risk the house that you're living in? So because you're already in a house that you own and you're thinking, should I convert it into an HMO? Should I SA it and then go and rent somewhere else? That is a good option. But I would need to know more about the numbers behind that to see if it's actually worth doing that. Is it really worth the upheaval of your wife and your kids to move out of your home where you're settled, all because you just want to start in property? You don't need to do that, right? Choose the strategy that you want to do based on what you're trying to achieve, rather than because of the house that you're sitting on and the equity that you're sitting on. You know, don't try and fit that square peg into the round hole. Follow the steps, step by step, that I share all the time. Have a very, very clear goal in your mind. What is the number that you need to achieve? Then choose the strategy that's going to be best for you to achieve that, and then go and buy some bloody houses. So don't let the equity in your house be the stumbling block, the mental block that, well, there's all that equity there, I could start with that. Don't do that. Get resourceful, use other people's money, and go and find some properties that meet your criteria, and then raise the money for it. Shad, I hope that that's helped you. That was a big ass question, wasn't it? Lots going on there and lots to unpick, right? Okay, next, Yusuf is looking for help in commercial property. So Yusuf, I know you, and I want to find out what you've done so far before you're moving on to commercial property. But you know what our email address is if you need. But also I want you to DM me on Instagram so that I can dive a little deeper into what stage you're at with your investing before you're moving into commercial. But we've got a couple of really, really strong commercial property mentors in the team here at Property Wealth System, so I can plug you into them if you need them. Next, Kelly. Okay, Kelly, you clearly didn't listen to my podcast from a couple of weeks ago, because your question is one I hear over and over again, many, many times over, which is, how do I get angel investors or investors for properties to partner with? What is the process here? Okay, so Kelly, finding angel investors and finding deals go hand in hand, okay? You have to know the difference between a good deal and a bad deal to be able to find angel investors, okay? If you don't know how to invest in property based on the numbers and based on the quality of the deals, there is no way that you're going to get an angel investor to invest with you, because you're not confident enough, right? And when they ask you questions about, well, what happens if it doesn't value up, or what happens if you can't sell it, then you're going to, stumble across that. So, Kelly, the first things first is, don't worry about the money. What are you trying to achieve? What's your strategy? Then go view some properties, run the numbers. This is what I teach everyone on my 3-day property investment workshop, is how to actually crunch the numbers. And then I talk for about 3 hours on this one topic of angel investors and how we basically position ourselves so that it doesn't feel like we're asking for money. And it's really interesting that you said here, investors for properties to partner with. I really don't want you doing that, right? That's called a joint venture. And I'm dead against joint ventures. Reason being is you feel you want someone to partner with you because they have the money and you have the deal. Well, you're never going to grow as an investor if you're constantly relying on somebody else to have the money. I want to teach you how to be resourceful enough to raise your money no matter what the deal is. So it's a bit of tough love at the start, I'm afraid, Kelly, but I will beat you up a bit and show you how to know exactly what a good deal is, so that then you can position it correctly with angel investors. It's not about finding them. They're literally everywhere. They'll be all in your life right now without you knowing it, because you're maybe not saying the correct things to people. But Kelly, I think you need to worry less about finding angel investors and concern yourself more with quality deals. Do you know the difference between a good deal and a bad deal? What numbers and analysis are you using to calculate the performance of a particular deal? That is more important, because angel investors are literally everywhere. We also use something called a private investor proposal document for our investors, and you can have 3 different levels of private investor proposal document. You can have a really dumbed down simple version that just tells a potential angel how it works, or you can have a kind of medium level, which is a bit more detailed, showing them the deals, showing them your model, what the plan is around the property in terms of adding value and how they're going to get their money back. And then you can go to a super detailed level where it would be venture capitalist type document. So all of this stuff is a lot more in depth than just, how do I find an angel investor? It all intrinsically links to, what do you think is a good deal? Where are you looking for your deals right now? How are you calculating the numbers? And are you actually active right now? How many people in the last 2 weeks have you actually approached to be an angel investor? And if the answer to that is none, then we haven't even started yet then, Kelly, have we, right? So let's make sure that we're getting all our steps in the correct order before we worry about maybe steps that are too far ahead into the future. Hope that's helped you, Kelly. Then I have Jan here. Now, Jan, this one here worried me when I read it, because the question is how to package a deal to present to a potential investor. Now, if you know what a good deal looks like and you've run the numbers, then you would know how to present it. Yeah? So what your question tells me is maybe your deal analysis is not in a place where it needs to be. So for example, if you're just asking for how do you present it, well, I do it in a PDF, digital format is the correct answer, right? But if you're asking how do you package up a deal, then that's more about actually, do you know what a deal looks like? So for example, I'm on LinkedIn, and obviously in my bio it says that I'm a property investor, so people can search for you and find you, and if they're a property sourcer, they'll find me and they'll bombard me with messages. I've got this deal, I've got this deal, right? Now, one person's idea of a deal and another person's idea of a deal might be worlds and worlds and worlds apart. So here at Property Wealth System, everyone knows what a deal looks like based on the numbers. Okay, so if you know how to do the deal analysis, Jan, you will then know exactly how to position your deal. As an investor, what do we care about? What's the end value? What's the GDV? What am I going to get out of this? How long is it going to take me to realize that return? Are you going to be selling this to your investors based on a yield or on a cash flow or a return on investment? There's 3 different ways that you can package it up, and each and every one of those options will be important to a different person. Okay, so all I care about is my ROI and the cash flow. Yield is not important, depending on, of course, the strategy. So Jan, your question, I hope, is more along the lines of what does a good deal look like? And in terms of packaging it up, you simply just lay out all the numbers on a PDF, and that's you sending it to your investors, right? A sophisticated investor can run the numbers that you've just presented with them, and they'll do their own due diligence on what you've said. So if you've said the back end value is going to be 150 grand, they'll do their own due diligence to check that it's worth 150 grand, not just taking your word for it. And then they'll decide if they're doing the deal based on the research and due diligence that they do and the numbers that you presented. So Jan, I hope that's helped you. Being a deal packager or a deal sourcer, okay, that is a time-intensive strategy, okay? So if you're in a job of any kind, being a deal sourcer or a deal packager is very, very challenging. So for those of you that are watching this now, I want you to be very clear on what limitations do you actually have in your life. Is it capital? Is it time? Is it knowledge? Is it confidence? Like what is it that you lack? And then your role is to make sure that you get an abundance in that. And then you can move forward, right? That's the only way to overcome any challenges in any business. So be really self-critical, reflect carefully on yourself, on what you're trying to achieve, and make sure you choose a strategy that aligns with that, not the one that just takes the least amount of money because you don't have any. That isn't a sensible route to take in your business. Last and not least, right, this is Anton. So Anton, there's a lot to unpick in your question because there's 2 questions that are interlinked here. And it's something that people get really hung up on. So I'm glad you've asked this because it will help lots of other people who are watching tonight. So the first question, any experience from students in the Northeast, Middlesbrough in particular, is it a good area to focus on? And then in brackets you put HMO or buy to let. Okay, Or is there any reason why not to focus in this area? Rental yields are very strong. And then you follow up by asking, is Liverpool suitable for entry-level investors with a max of 100k budget, which means only less attractive areas might be viable for buy-to-let? Now, Anton, so we're mixing up area and strategy in the same place here. Is your decision to do HMO or buy-to-let? That's the first question. And then we have to then choose an area that works very well with that strategy. And HMO and buy-to-let are very, very different, okay? So Middlesbrough, yes, I've got lots of students either living or investing in the Northeast, Middlesbrough in particular, right? So I don't have any, alarm bells going off with that. You're talking about rental yields being very strong. Well, I've just shared that yields is not that important, because yield is generally a calculation you use when you're leaving money in a deal, okay? So I'm all about ROI. That means I've got an infinite return on my investment. I've got all my money out and I can go again, okay? And then you bring Liverpool into the mix. Now, Liverpool is a massive city. That can be very, very overwhelming. So you're asking about entry level in Liverpool, and you're saying 100 grand budget, which by the way, is about 100 grand more than most of my students start with. And then you're saying, but that means only less attractive areas might be viable for buy-to-let. Now, what do you class as less attractive? Because from with an investor's hat on, an attractive area is where the numbers are banging, right? It's not as if it's pretty or if you get capital growth. It's, are the numbers banging when I run my deal analysis, okay? You don't need to live there, but there's got to be somebody wanting to live there. The very first area I invested in was an area that you would call less attractive, in inverted commas, to somebody that, I don't know. It was just a lower level area, lower income area is what I'm going to say. But the numbers are banging, right? So less attractive, I'm going to just put in a massive big bracket and say, to whom is it less attractive, right? From an investor's point of view, it's all about the numbers. Where am I going to make the most money? Now, buy-to-lets, the demand is through the roof throughout the UK. Okay, so I'm not worried about buy-to-let demand. Obviously, there's little micro economies around the UK that you need to make sure that the demand is strong for the particular demographic that you're looking to attract. HMOs is very different. HMOs is very demand driven. So if you say HMOs in Middlesbrough or HMOs in Liverpool, well, Liverpool's so big. Look at the little areas outside of Liverpool. Maybe that's more manageable for you to get your head around at the beginning. But for you, Anton, it's which is your strategy? Is it buy-to-let or is it HMO? With 100 grand as your budget, you could be doing 5 buy-to-lets at once, right? So I think you're thinking with that 100 grand, you have to buy the property outright for cash. I think that's what you're thinking. You don't need to do that. Don't over complicate this. It might be that you're a little bit scared about using bridging to begin with or whatever, but if you're looking to scale your business, then with that 100 grand, you put 20 grand into each, then you're doing 5 at a time, and then you can scale quicker. HMOs, if you've never done that before, I would say hold your horses and get a couple of buy-to-lets under your belt before you go down the HMO route. The legislation, the regulations, and the lending are going to be your challenge as a starter, okay? So forget the Middlesbrough, the Liverpool thing. Is what are you actually going to do as your strategy? And then you choose the area that buy-to-lets work strong in. So you might look at Middlesbrough, and then you might look at 5 or 6 different areas outwith of Liverpool, and then go, right, where does the numbers work best? And that's your investment area. Done. No confusing. It's all done on the numbers, right? And this less attractive area thing, you have to put that to bed, right? Ultimately, where you make the money is very attractive from an investor's point of view. You don't need to live there, but other people need to want to live there. And that's the key. If they're going to pay the rent that gives you that return on investment and cash flow that you want in each of your transactions, then it doesn't matter if it is not an area that you would choose not to live in. I really hope you've enjoyed my session today. For those of you listening on the podcast, as a little Brucey bonus, tune in again next week. But for my Property Wealth System community gang here, I hope you have got some value out of this. Make sure you give me a little follow on Instagram if you don't already, carolineclaydon.property. I've got a very funny reel that is about to drop, and it's a good job I don't take myself too seriously. Have a brilliant evening, take care of yourselves, and keep close to the fire. Take care, bye now.